What is up, everybody? It's your boy Clint from the Die Hard MMA podcast coming to you for odds.com with a UFC 250 weigh-in recap. That's right. I checked out the weigh-ins this morning. I watched the fighters. I'm looking for all the angles that we can possibly take to make some cash this weekend. And we want to know, how do we feel about our bets now that we have seen these fighters weigh in? There's a lot of things that can happen at the weigh-ins. There's a lot of ways that these can go. And maybe you want to hedge off of somebody. Maybe you want to double down on somebody. And that's what we are here to talk about today. So you'll have to pardon the background. I don't have my fancy setup today because this was a last-minute decision to kind of go ahead and go forward with this type of a video. Don't worry, it's going to be better in the future, I promise. So getting started here. Watching the weigh-ins, I'm blown away by how fast this whole thing went. That was the biggest thing that really stood out to me. All four fighters got weighed, I'm sorry, not four. Every single fighter on the card got weighed in about 45 minutes. Unreal. I almost feel like they set a record for weigh-in times. Everybody was on point. Nobody missed. It was a fantastic weigh-in to keep track of. The first thing I noticed, Herbert Burns versus Evan Dunham. The size advantage for Evan Dunham. That's something that we talked about, and it might end up being a bit of a problem. Herbert Burns is normally fighting at 145, whereas Dunham is normally fighting at 155. Dunham went ahead and cut 5 extra pounds to make it a 150 catch weight. Herbert Burns looked good himself. I have no issues with the way that he came out, but Evan Dunham definitely looked emotional. He looked pumped up. He looked ready to go, and he is going to have a size advantage in this fight. That's something to take notice of. Now, the second fight of the night, Alonzo Menafield versus Devin Brown Bear Clark. The only thing you can talk about here is how much of a monster Menafield is. So I've talked before about how Devin Clark, I don't really think he's a true 205er. Well, staturely, height-wise, these guys are the same size. But one of them is all lower body. Devin Clark has these giant thick thighs, big legs, lots of explosion. Menafield is the exact opposite. He's got this giant ripped up upper body. His shoulders, his arms are the size of his opponent's head. I mean, the power that this dude brings to the table is just something else. That one doesn't surprise me whatsoever. Menafield comes in looking like a beast every single time he fights, and I still expect him to get that first round KO. When Clark can't keep this guy on the mat or can't get to those hips, he's gonna eat a big bomb, and I just think he goes down. I have not changed anything, and Menafield looks ready to go. I mean, he was pretty cut up. He looked like he is in shape and ready for this fight. The third fight that we need to talk about here, Jussier Formiga versus Alex Perez. Perez's size. I expected Formiga to look a little bit bigger when they faced off. I was a little surprised at how much larger Perez is than Formiga. It doesn't change my opinion of the fight so much. I still believe Formiga is a decent bet. I still believe that Formiga is going to be able to look to use his sweeps, his escapes, his reversals, his back control. That's really his whole game here. So the fact that Perez is larger and is going to look to take this fight to the mat doesn't really change a whole lot here. So I'm still siding with Formiga. I'm still siding with the veteran savvy and the experience in this case. Charles Byrd versus Maki Pitolo. The first thing that I noticed was, holy crap, is Byrd in shape. This is one of those guys, he always comes in shape. He's very well muscled. He's a big, thick 185er, but today, oh boy, today did he look ready to go. I don't know if he's got some extra motivation. Maybe it's coming off of the 2 losses, fighting for his job, but he looks like he is in the best shape that I've seen him in a long time. Dude is ready. Maki Pitolo, he wore the extra 15 pounds pretty well. He's coming up from 170 to 185 in this spot, and he looked fantastic with the extra 15 pounds on him. So that's something that's a big question for me. Charles Byrd has been winning his fights up until he got clipped by power punchers, and that's exactly what Maki Pitolo is. However, his best shots haven't come when he's been fighting at 170. Now that he's moving up to 185, is that power going to be more relevant? Is he going to have more gas in the tank here? It's possible. I don't trust Maki Pitolo. We've got Charles Byrd in a big 4-leg parlay, so we are minimalizing our risk for a reward since I'm betting every single fight on this card. Check out our other videos for those picks, but I still think Charles Byrd is going to get this done with his grappling and size advantage. Now we move to featherweight. Cody Stamann taking on Brian Boom Kelleher. I really am impressed by the stature of Brian Kelleher. This is one where Stamann is known as a big featherweight. He's known as, to come in and really be able to outsize and outmuscle his opponents. He's a little bit thicker than Kelleher here, but Kelleher looks ready to go. He was bleeding confidence. Coming off of 2 finishes, Kelleher has been around this block before. He's fought under the COVID circumstances. This guy is ready to bang tomorrow, and we don't know where Stamann's at still. He looked a little deflated. Maybe that's the weight cut. Maybe that's the passing of his brother, but that's part of the reason why I can't bet this guy is I do not know where his head is at. Physically, he looked fine. We moved to middleweight. We had a weird situation. Ian Heinish gets pulled from the card because I guess one of his corner members tested positive for COVID-19. Well, they figured that out and they did a retest, and it turns out everything got cleared up. So I'm not sure if it was a false positive. Maybe they removed him and everybody else tested clean. I'm not sure. But Ian is going to go ahead and fight. So we've got Hainish versus GM3. That fight is on, and I do have a bet on it. So Ian Hainish, what can you say? The dude's a brick shithouse. He comes in looking cut up, well-muscled, in shape every single time. You always get the same look at weigh-ins from Ian the Hurricane Heinish, and he looked very, very good. Considering the way things are right now, people struggling to find training, not being able to hit the gym, not getting the mat time they need with COVID going on, you kind of expect people not to look quite as sharp. Well, he looks just as sharp as ever. Same with GM3. GM3 is ever improving. He's going to have a reach advantage here, but I didn't see anything that stood out for me on this one. My opinion changes none at all for Heinish versus Meerschaert because both guys came in looking excellent. Both guys came in looking focused, and I think it's just going to be a good scrap. I think that one's going to be back and forth, and it's very difficult to call. Alex Caceres versus Chase Hooper. They could not have picked a better person for Chase Hooper to match up against here. They are mirrors of each other, physically speaking. They're both very long. They're both very lanky. They're decently muscled for what they need to do, but neither of these guys is a big shithouse. Both of them are flexible. Both of them are fast, and that's what we're looking for. This is going to be a really fun fight. When they faced off, the fact that they lined up so well with each other as far as height and reach is concerned, the body types are just fantastic here. Hooper's looking to get it to the mat as soon as possible. Alex Caceres is going to be scrambling for his life to keep it on the feet, and I think Hooper locks up that choke. Eddie Wineland taking on Sean O'Malley. Oh, did we call this one a mark or what? Sean O'Malley, first off, looks in phenomenal shape. Eddie Wineland looks like himself. He always comes in shape. He's a consummate professional. He's ready to go. But Sean O'Malley has a massive height and reach advantage here. I don't know how this is going to go beyond just Sean O'Malley dictating where this fight takes place. I think he boxes him up, and honestly, I'm expecting a finish. I know everybody is expecting Sean O'Malley to finish here, but I can't say otherwise. I mean, I feel like the UFC gave him a veteran opponent with a decent name, a step up in competition, but one that he can manage. And I expect him just to be able to hit Wineland where Wineland can't hit back. And eventually it's going to be too much for him. Sean O'Malley also looked very emotional, very pumped up, excited, ready to go. He kind of got in Wineland's face. A little more of a bad boy attitude than I recall seeing from Sean O'Malley, and I kind of like it. At welterweight, Neil Magny taking on Anthony Rocco Martin. This one is one that kind of concerned me just a little bit because Neil Magny is one of my favorite plays on the card, and Rocco Martin looked phenomenal. When he got on the scales, he was pumped up, energetic, ready to go. His body is shredded. He has taken this fight very, very seriously, and that kind of concerned me. Well, then Neil Magny gets on the scales, and he looked fantastic as well. Then they get to the weigh-ins, and I remembered why I bet Neil Magny. The size advantage, the reach advantage, all of those physical opportunities are going to go to Neil Magny, and I absolutely love it. So I had a little bit of a heart attack. I got a little concerned for my play on Neil Magny this weekend, but after watching the whole thing play out and the face-offs, I feel a little better. I'm still good on my Neil Magny play this weekend. I'm giving away way too many of my bets. If you tuned in for just this video and you haven't watched the other ones, do me a favor, subscribe to Odds HQ, subscribe to the Die Hard MMA podcast, check out our previous videos. We go in depth breaking down these fights. I do a roundtable with my boys Mo Scream, Nick, and Jimmy the Bag. And if you didn't know, my boys Mo Scream and Nick are going to be doing a full weigh-in recap. They're going to go more in depth than I am. They're going to go live this afternoon. So be sure to subscribe to Odds HQ. Check my boys out. Bantamweight, we've got Aldo Sterling versus Korey Sandhagen, the people's main event. This is the one that everybody's excited about. Could have been for the vacant title. Definitely the number one contender fight. Both guys looked phenomenal. The biggest thing that stood out to me here is Aljamain Sterling's emotion. You could tell that he was keyed in. You can tell that he is amped up. He is ready to go. Aljo is bringing the fire in this spot. And I know Korey Sandhagen, he was professional. He looked good. Nothing stood out to me. Nothing about Korey Sandhagen stood out to me at the weigh-ins. The only thing that I can say that I wasn't expecting was just how excited Aljo Sterling is. He looks very, very confident in this spot, and I think he's ready to put on a show. So if you're playing a little ping pong on this fight like I was, Aldo may have the momentum here, just from an emotional standpoint. Staying at bantamweight, Rafael Assunção versus Cody Garbrandt. I mean, Rafael Assunção looked phenomenal. For a guy that's supposed to be 38 years old, for a guy that's supposed to be winding down in his career, he looked fantastic. Absolutely ripped up. His body looked fine. He didn't look like he struggled to make the weight whatsoever. And Cody Garbrandt looked flat. I mean, his muscle tone, his definition, it's not where I expected it to be. He doesn't look as trimmed and cut up as he normally is, and I don't know if that's an intentional decision. I don't know if that's a lack of training. I'm not sure what that means. And he just didn't emotionally look to have that spark. Usually, this is a guy that's got some fire behind him. This is a guy who wants to bring the fight, gets in his opponent's face, and is ready to go. But because of what's going on here, he just doesn't seem like he's got that this time. I'm not sure why or what happened, but I'm a little bit against Cody here simply from seeing him on the scales and how sluggish he looked. Amanda Nunez versus Felicia Spencer. We've reached the main event. Nothing to report here. Amanda Nunez has the height and reach advantage. She made weight very easily. She's comfortable at 145 because she's a natural 135er. Felicia Spencer, she thick. That's about all we can say. She's a little shorter. She's not quite as long. She's going to have a reach disadvantage here, but she's a grappler. That's what she wants. And because she is a little shorter, a little stockier, she's a little wider, she's a little thicker. And I think that's exactly what's to be expected. At the face-offs, though, I can tell you this much. Spencer didn't flinch. For facing the women's GOAT, the greatest of all time, coming in here, being a plus 500 underdog, Felicia Spencer looks ready to go. Now, I'm not saying to bet her because I can't stand in front of the runaway freight train that is Amanda Nunez, but I wouldn't hate it if you put a little sprinkle on Spencer. I wouldn't blame you one bit for taking what I think might just be a live dog. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Remember to subscribe to Odds HQ. Catch me on Twitter at DieHardMMAPod. Subscribe to the Die Hard MMA podcast as well. Don't forget my boys Nick and Mo Scream going live this afternoon to also break down the weigh-ins and give their takes on everything that they saw today. Let's make some cash tomorrow, folks. We've got a lot of picks, a lot of bets, a lot of great opportunities. It's going to be a good, solid night of fights. Good luck, everybody, on your action. Enjoy the weekend.